Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Luca Paula Show. Lots have happened, and so we're just going to break it down right now because it's crazy the amount of shilling that these conservative influencers will do for Israel, particularly Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, we saw Patrick Bet-David recently went out and he completely shilled for Benjamin Netanyahu and he shilled for Israel. And he claimed to ask all these tough questions. And he asked questions, yes, but then there was no pushback. He never followed up on these questions with Bibi Netanyahu. And so who do we have next? Officer Brandon Tatum, this black conservative influencer who a lot of people like. Well, he recently has come out and completely defended all of the Israeli army's actions against the people of Gaza, and he's defended Netanyahu to a T. And so he had Netanyahu on his podcast quite recently on YouTube, and it didn't do too well. And he framed it the same way Patrick Bet-David framed it, of asking tough questions. But these tough questions, they really didn't come from any place. He asked the questions, but he never followed up. It was the same thing as PBD did. So here's one clip we have of Netanyahu essentially spilling Israeli propaganda. And so we're going to play this clip for you. Mind you, this was on Officer Tatum's show.
And I have to tell you, Israel has the most moral army and also the most adjudicated army, because we don't allow, any of these incidents to go uninvestigated. We investigate them. There's an independent investigation. That's in the army. There's an independent investigation above the army, if it's necessary, in our judiciary, which that corrupt prosecutor, before he had to escape the sexual assault charges, he said Israel has not only the means inside the army to check malfeasance, but above the army. And I stand with our soldiers. I mean, they're the most moral soldiers in the world, none more moral, I could say. And just as America investigates its own forces when necessary, so does Israel.
And Prime Minister, I find it interesting that the public or people in the media don't get this, what you're saying. It's clear as the noonday sun to me, some of the things that you've alluded to.
And I have to tell you.
Okay, so notice what he said, right? So Netanyahu was talking about how this is the most moral army and how we are, we have independent investigations, and then those investigations are independent, and those are investigated as well. And Officer Tatum provides no pushback whatsoever, none. When Bibi Netanyahu says this is the most moral army in the history of the world, Officer Tatum's like, yeah, I really think that was interesting. Like what? Folks, I'm going to provide you some evidence that this is just not true. So if you just Google, a simple Google search, how many innocents has the Israeli army killed since October 7th? You have the AI overview. It says right here, more than 64,700 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli forces in Gaza as of September 3rd, 2025. Granted, this is 4 days later. This is the 7th. A report based on an internal Israeli intelligence database suggests that 83% of these fatalities are civilians. But they're the most moral army in the world, according to Bibi Netanyahu, and Officer Tatum's just gonna nod along like this, taking that Israel money. Like how do these influencers let these people lie? I understand the money must be great, but how do these people allow all of these Israeli propagandists, right? These war criminals. This guy's a war criminal. How do you allow him to lie to your face and expect to have any credibility whatsoever after the interview? Granted, I don't think the interview did well. I think it got like maybe 100K views. Maybe that's a little bit too much. I'm not sure. But okay, this is just backing up what I'm saying here. So once again, Netanyahu says we have the most moral army in the world, which I just disproved that. Anybody with a Google search engine can do that. Anybody that uses AI could relatively do that. It's so simple. 64,700 people that were killed. 83% were innocent civilians as of 4 days ago. I literally just pulled it up for you. And then here's what happened to the Gaza Strip, okay? So this is the most moral army, what they did to a peaceful place on the surface is what it appears to be, a peaceful place. Here's what they did. So right here, this is Gaza, this is the Gaza Strip, July 8th, 2023. Beautiful, right? It appears to be beautiful. And then here it is today, September 1st, 6 days ago. And I'm sorry for excessively breathing into the mic, but just imagine if this was you. I understand they frame it as, oh, these are radical Muslims, okay, but the Muslims don't just live there. There's Catholics that live there too. There's Christians that live there too. 3 Catholics were killed by the IDF, and they claim it was a mistake, although they say Israel was the most moral army, and all of our attacks are targeted. And this is something that Netanyahu has said. So if you're targeted, well, then you're targeting Christians. Those were Christians that you targeted. You're targeting innocent civilians. You brag about how you have the most advanced warfare and how you send out they airdrop these warnings before they're gonna bomb some. Okay, but like, where are these people expected to go? They're landlocked. This is tragic, man. If anybody had any remote compassion, you would understand why this isn't okay. It's not okay. And this guy, Officer Tatum, just shilled for Israel, completely let these things go unchecked. And it's so frustrating to see these influencers when they largely appear to be bought. And I don't know how much he received for this interview. He might have done the interview for free. He mentioned how he took a trip to Israel recently. And this was quite funny because he kind of went against what he had the interview set up to do. So this next clip that I'm going to reference from the Officer Tatum interview with Benjamin Netanyahu, in it he talks about how his congregation, so he had his church congregation go to Israel, and he said it was an amazing experience. And he said the only insult they faced was being spat on by a Jewish child. And he said this to the Prime Minister of Israel as of to say, oh no, we were only spit on once. So I'm going to play this for you and just listen to how absurd this is.
As a Christian who went to Israel, I spent 2 weeks there with the church, and we had an incredible time. We had only one incident where a small child spit on one of the pastors.
If you're trying to portray this country and their people as good, wouldn't you leave this out? So obviously this backfired. And I'm not going to pull this up here. I might pull this up, actually. I just want to go on YouTube real quick and Google Officer Tatum. And I want to Google this interview with Netanyahu and just see how many views it's got. Because I don't know, I could be wrong. Maybe it did well, but let's see here. All right, so I'm clicking on his link right now. I'm not going to play it for you. He has 61,000 views as of 2 days ago. So Officer Tatum essentially sold out for 61,000 views. So that's that. But this is not going well for these people. All of these pro-Israel influencers are trying to get us to somehow forget what we're seeing. And it's just quite crazy. I mean, like I said, they claim this is the most moral army. You can debate if it's a genocide. Credible sources have called it a genocide. I believe it's a genocide. And you just see when these people have Netanyahu on, it's like, I don't understand what, it's just a softball interview. It's like a girl pitching a baseball to Giancarlo Stanton, or, I don't know, I'm not a big baseball guy, Aaron Judge. It's like a 12-year-old girl pitching a ball to Aaron Judge and saying, oh, that was a hard pitch. That was a great pitch. And he cracks it out of the park because it's a 12-year-old girl. It's just so crazy how these people, the lack of pushback when they have this guy on, this tour that he's on to try and win back the hearts and minds of the American youth. You lost the American left a long time ago. Now you lost the American right in terms of the youth. The only people that Israel has left in America, the only generation, is right-leaning Gen X and right-leaning boomers. That's it, bro. You're cooked in like 15 years. You're cooked. American support in a decade is going to be cooked. You're done. So I guess they're going to try and do whatever they can now while they still have American support, majority American support, which I don't even know if they have that. But this is very tragic, man. This is very sad. These people don't deserve this. If you were in the Palestinian situation, I understand you're being bombarded with Israeli propaganda about how these people are animals, and Ben Shapiro says these people are animals from birth and that they're all terrorists, even the babies are terrorists. But these are people. They're not all Muslim. They're not evil. They're not all evil. They're not all bad. So it's just very infuriating as a Catholic myself. You hate that this happens. You hate that this is allowed to continue to go on. And you hate that your religion, your consensus for your religion, your voting bloc, if you want to call it a voting bloc, is expected to just do it, be complicit and follow the party line. It's like, no, I can't support this. This isn't what I don't support politicians going over there and autographing missiles and autographing bombs and signing them saying kill them all. It just doesn't make any sense. If you're claiming to be a Catholic, if you're claiming to be Christian, you shouldn't be supporting this. And our country is giving billions and billions of dollars away to this country to supply them with weapons to kill innocents when we can't even pave the roads, when we can't even build any infrastructure. Our country, America, is crumbling. We are crumbling as a nation, infrastructure-wise, job-wise. The housing market is fucked. We are cooked, basically. We can't afford to run our country. And so we're in, I don't even know how many trillions of dollars of debt. It's in the 100 trillions, I believe. And no, it's not. It's 37 trillion. But the point is, I'm getting off track here. We can't afford to run our country. Why are we giving this country billions and billions of dollars? About $4 billion annually, I think, all time since October 7th. It's been around $20 billion that we've given Israel for the weapons, largely. And it's just, I don't support this. You shouldn't support this. This doesn't have legs. This argument does not have legs. They're going to continue to tell you that Israel is the most moral army. I understand, whatever. It is what it is. But you can't be stupid enough to believe it. That's all I'll say. We have another story to transition. It brings me no joy to talk about this, man, because it doesn't go to great places. So I just want to preface this by saying these things don't have to happen. We should be able to live in a society that is a high trust society. What we live in now is a low trust society because the adults are gone. I don't know where they went, but they're gone. And ever since the rise of Black Lives Matter, we as a society have treated the police, the cops, like shit. In the majority of scenarios, when you look these things up, the cops have been right. Okay, well, what am I talking about here? Well, yesterday, there was a 23-year-old Ukrainian refugee, and her name, I apologize if I butcher it, but she's a Ukrainian refugee. Her name is Irina Zarutska, and she was fatally stabbed in an unprovoked attack by a 34-year-old DeCarlos Brown on Charlotte's Lynx Blue Line train. And this infuriates me, because this isn't the first time that a white person has been attacked and killed, or at least brutally beat up by a black person, by a black man. Her blood's literally on the hands of this guy. And I'm going to tell you why it's so infuriating. We have the clip right here, and we're not going to play the full clip because of YouTube. Obviously, it's not going to show her getting brutally murdered. But look at this, man. So she's just on the subway, right? I'll restart the video. She's on the subway right here. She's just on her phone. 23-year-old girl from Ukraine. She wanted to escape the war. She wanted to escape the violence. She came here. She gets brutally murdered for, I'm not sure what it is, but look at this video, man. He sees whatever. He just goes in. And obviously they're not going to show the attack. I don't want to see the attack. And so when you continue on, this video goes past, okay? In a couple seconds, we're going to see him walking around. He pulls out a knife. He pulls out a knife right here. and he stabs her and he kills her. So after that, this is him walking around the subway with blood coming from him all over. Look at this. He kills this woman and he's just walking around and blood's coming out. And this makes me mad. But the fact that nobody did anything on that subway car, this 23-year-old girl was brutally murdered and nobody did a thing. And would you believe that nobody on national news covered it? Why? Because it was a black man brutally attacking and killing an innocent white girl. And would you believe this guy was arrested 14 times? Don't believe me? Here are the mugshots right here, folks. This is it. This is DeCarlos Brown. 14 times he was arrested. Look at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 14 times. You think he could be locked up after 14 times? What's to say about the justice system, especially after 2020, especially after George Floyd? What is to say about this system that's supposed to protect people? Violent criminals aren't supposed to be on the street. Why? Why was this allowed to happen? And what say of the cowards that didn't do anything about it? And it's very infuriating, man. And you go back to somebody like Daniel Penny, okay? You remember Daniel Penny? Last year, Daniel Penny protected a subway car full of people because this black man right here, this mentally ill black man, was becoming very violent, and it was thought that he was going to eventually harm somebody on that subway car. So what did Daniel Penny do? He put him in a chokehold. He sadly killed him, but he saved the subway car full of people because this man was erratic, acting aggressive, and there was national outrage because Daniel Penny, for what it was, tragically killed this man because he restrained him from hurting anybody on the subway car. You remember the story. There was no national outrage about this incident right here with DeCarlos Brown killing this poor Ukrainian young woman. And you know that if it was the other way around, if it was a white man brutally murdering a black woman, national outrage, Fox, MSNBC, CNN, Newsmax, everybody would be talking about this. Everybody would be outraged, and rightfully so. But when it's the other way around, crickets. And so I just wonder, what did the mayor of Charlotte say? Because this happened in Charlotte. What did she say? Well, interestingly enough, the mayor of Charlotte, her name is, it's not going to say her name. She says right here, anyone who shares the video of the black man brutally stabbing a white woman in her city, she's thinking about the safety in Charlotte. Quote, I want to thank our media partners and community members who have chosen not to repost or share the footage. I've been thinking hard about what safety really looks like in our city, and I remain committed to doing all we can to protect our residents and ensure Charlotte is a place where everyone feels safe. This is the mayor. You'd think there would be, I don't know, at least say prayers and condolences for her family. Say this is tragic and this shouldn't have happened, and we should have safe communities. I want that. You, as the mayor, wouldn't you want to say, like, I condemn this, I think this is awful, I want the community to be safe, I want the subway cars, I want the public transit to be safe for everybody. I don't want people to live in fear, because now you go on that public transit, you go on that links, you go on that subway car, you're going to be living in fear. You're going to be looking around, and unfortunately, if you are white, you're going to think twice when a black person passes you and sit behind you. That's just what it is. But interestingly enough, there was a clip that was found from a UK TV show on Netflix. And what it did was it portrayed a white man who was on a subway car and, for whatever reason, was making women, including black women on the subway car in the show, feel unsafe simply by standing there. And this is to represent the false reality that we are fed through entertainment, and this is just what women are fed to make it seem like, I guess, white people are afraid. Watch this. This is a side-by-side comparison, man.
stand there.
Yeah.
I can stand there if I like.
You're live on Facebook right now.
I've got you too.
Me too.
Me too.
It's so funny how, yes, while that may happen, they're trying to portray white people as weird and creepy and violent and all that. I get it, whatever. But when there's zero coverage of this story in the mainstream news, if it wasn't for X, we wouldn't have this story at all. When there's zero coverage, you know who the game is rigged against. You know who the game is rigged against. So this prompted me to do a little bit of research, because I understand why we were led to this point, why this happened, okay? It all started with BLM. It all started with Black Lives Matter, trying to dismantle the police, trying to just take away any semblance of law enforcement in this country. Because what they believed was that law enforcement was unlawfully, racially targeting black people. So I did a little bit of research because I have a brain. I remember when this was happening. So I asked, whatever happened to the Jacob Blake case in Wisconsin? Because if you remember, the Jacob Blake case in Kenosha, Wisconsin, they were saying that an unarmed black man was shot by the cops and he was paralyzed. And this was a whole thing in 2020 that instigated BLM. In the Summer of Love, if you remember, they burnt down Minnesota. So AI said this. The Jacob Blake case concluded with no charges filed against the officer, Rutsan Shesky, who shot Blake in August 2020 after both state and federal prosecutors determined there wasn't enough evidence to prove he violated the law. Citing Wisconsin's self-defense law, Blake, who was left paralyzed from the waist down, pleaded guilty to misdemeanor disorderly conduct stemming from the incident and was sentenced to probation. The incident sparked protest and unrest in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and further fueled calls for police reform and criminal justice reform. Okay, but why? Why wasn't there enough evidence? You scroll right down here. Federal prosecutors announced Friday that they won't file charges against a white police officer who shot Jacob Blake in Wisconsin last year. Hold on, the federal prosecutors? The federal prosecutors announced that they won't file charges. Why? Why was that? You see what I'm saying? It doesn't tell you why. So right here, we're going to Google in real time. Why weren't charges filed against Jacob Blake's shooter? In real time. And I can't spell, I'm sorry. Here we go. Charges weren't filed against Officer Rutsan Shesky because state and federal prosecutors determined he acted in self-defense, citing video evidence showing Blake was armed with a knife and lunged toward the officer during a struggle. Prosecutors concluded they couldn't prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Shesky's use of force was unlawful, as he was justified for firing his weapon to stop the threat Blake presented. And this was in January 2021 when this came out. So if you remember, if you were paying attention to the news that day, that week, you would have thought, these racist cops, they shot this unarmed black man. Terrible. But then when the evidence came out, Jacob Blake actually had a knife and lunged toward the cop. So that cop acted in self-defense. Boom, boom. Unfortunate. But shot Jacob Blake. So you're still being made to think that the police are racist and that this unarmed black man was shot. And it's a tragic incident of how law enforcement took advantage of their power and racially targeted this man. Whereas this man was violent and lunged toward the police officer with a knife. And so the police officer was innocent, but let me guess, you never heard that information before. Mainstream media never reported it. Media, in general, just didn't report it. Even Fox News didn't report it. Why? Because they want you to think that the cops are racist and they want civil unrest in this country. Furthermore, they want you to fall into the black victimhood narrative in this scenario. Okay, so there's that. And then I went over here. Who killed Michael Brown in St. Louis? You remember Michael Brown in 2014? I was in 7th or 8th grade when this happened. This was like the rise of BLM. Darren Wilson, a former Ferguson police officer, killed Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, 2014. Wilson claimed he shot Brown in self-defense after Brown assaulted him and tried to grab his weapon. After a grand jury declined to indict him on the U.S. Department of Justice found no evidence of federal civil rights violations, St. Louis County Prosecutor Wesley Bell also decided not to bring state charges in 2020. And these are people that are on the left. And these are people that are in favor of taking away the rights of police officers. This is the state. This is the state. Remember that? If you remember correctly, Michael Brown, the killing of Michael Brown was something you heard all in the news. If you remember back then, like that was all people talked about that whole summer, literally where BLM started, or when they gained a lot of power and notoriety in this country. And you would have thought that Darren Wilson, the cop, was this racist white police officer who was taking advantage of all of his power and killed an innocent, unarmed black man. And once again, this is something that the media blew up. This is something that made you to believe that the cops were corrupt and that they were racist, and was blown up to create distrust of the system, to shake up the system. But it turns out right here, Wilson claimed, which they found this, obviously, they dropped all the charges. The state dropped all the charges, who was in favor of Michael Brown. Brown assaulted him and tried to grab his weapon. I mean, if you weren't following the case, you wouldn't know that. You wouldn't know. And so those are just two examples, right? And this finally brings me to a stat that the Hodge twins posted. Actually, I'm not going to bring up that stat. It's useless. I'm not going to do that. And so here's what I'm saying now. Here's the conclusion. When people say they want to live away from black people after this incident, and the incident last month where you had that couple in Cincinnati, that woman that got beat brutally by that group of black people. She was walking by, granted, maybe she said something, I don't know. But saying a racial slur, saying one word, does not give you license to beat the living crap out of somebody. Regardless of what you think, that's not a humane thing to do. Okay, let's go further back. Carmelo Anthony, Austin Metcalf, the story of the kid, the track and field athlete in Texas who was at a high school track and field event, whatever, and he comes from the bathroom or something, and he comes back to his tent where his school's at. This black kid, Carmelo Anthony, from a rival school, is sitting in the seat. He said, "Hey man, you're in my seat. This isn't your school. Please move, whatever." Carmelo Anthony brings out a knife at a track and field event. Carmelo Anthony, obviously black, Austin Metcalf, white. Carmelo Anthony brings out a knife at a school track and field event. Why is he bringing a knife to a track and field event? I'm not sure. Stabs Austin Metcalf in the stomach a couple times, ends up killing him. They don't release the footage. Why? Because it's damning. The national outrage was that this was an incident it wasn't true. That's what they were saying. They said Austin Metcalf deserved to be killed. They would talk about how this was a benign incident, but when the facts came out, Carmelo Anthony ended up being charged. Like, this was real stuff. And so it'll make you very angry. But you can't blame people when they say that, dude. It's just very sad. So, on a lighter topic to transition here, we had Tim Dillon go on Joe Rogan recently, and they talked about a lot of things. But one of the biggest things they talked about was Vice President J.D. Vance. Listen to this. So they talked about J.D. Vance's relationship with Silicon Valley tech billionaire Peter Thiel, member of the PayPal Mafia, this guy who might be the Antichrist. We'll talk about that a little bit later, potentially. But this guy who's really invested in transhumanism and wants all of this power in this country and for the world. And so they were talking about him, and for a lot of people, they exposed for the first time to normal audiences just who exactly fueled J.D. Vance's political career. So we'll play that clip for you right now.
You're also doing well enough.
2 Israeli startup entrepreneurs played roles in the rise of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She pulled out of an event commemorating Rabin. Some concluded that AOC doesn't like Israelis, but 2 were instrumental in the lawmaker's early career. That's where it gets weird. They find you when you're young.
They find you when you're making mojitos.
They find you when you're young and promising, like J.D.
Well, that's the thing. JD's going to have to, if he wants to be the president, he's going to have to say, Peter Thiel, I'm not.
The Antichrist.
He's going to have to say, Peter Thiel is Satan, and here's why that's good. JD has to get out there and go, wouldn't you rather know who Satan is and be friends with him and have dinner with him than have it be like, who's Satan?
Right.
So he's got to get out there and say, I happen to be friends with Satan. And I want that to be
misunderstood.
I want it to be destigmatized.
Right. If Satan could go on the Nelk Boys, maybe they could straighten it out.
That's right. Peter Thiel on the Nelk Boys, when they go, what do you think about fast food? And he goes, I take 1 pill every day to survive. And it gives me all of my nutrients.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think Peter Thiel eats food like a person. I think it's like he has some type of,
What?
you know.
What do you think?
I think a lot of these tech people, like, they don't like food. They're not food people, a lot of these tech people. I went to a few of these tech things in Austin. It's not, the food's never the thing. They're not like food people. They're not like, ooh, let me eat food. Like wasps are not either. Like real old school, like waspy.
Didn't you get invited to have lunch or something, dinner with Peter?
Yes, I said no.
Did you?
I said no. I'm a little wary of that circle of people. And I'm not saying there's anything inherently evil about them because obviously there's people in there. I don't know that I want to go to a dinner with someone who's going to talk endlessly about the Antichrist.
But yet you'll go to Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, of course.
And perform.
So a little shady. And nobody really talks about this. Like, you don't hear about this in mainstream news. You don't hear about this anywhere, really. And it's very interesting when you look at the political backers of J.D. Vance and Trump this cycle, too. I mean, this is somebody in 2016 who was claiming to be against the swamp and not take any political donations. Fast forward to 2024, and you have him taking donations from all of these people, whether that's Miriam Adelson, Israeli, who was thought to have connections to Mossad, gave him $100 million for his campaign. You have people like Elon Musk, who obviously has strong connections to Silicon Valley. You have people like the Peter Thiels. You have the Zuckerbergs. You have the Bezoses. All of those people. You have Bill Gates now. He's talking to Bill Gates about creating new pharmaceuticals for people, which is obviously a little bit weird considering back in 2020, the whole campaign was against people like Bill Gates. You had people like Donald Trump Jr. suggesting that Bill Gates was on Epstein's Island. 2025, 5 years later, he's sitting down with Bill Gates in the Oval Office. And so you have this whole, and the list goes on and on. Larry Ellison, CEO of Oracle, talking about creating a vaccine for each individual person. Whether or not that's going to be forced, that's a completely different subject. But it's just very weird, the influence that all of these Silicon Valley tech billionaires who are they're all socially awkward, or they appear to be socially awkward. They don't have normal human tendencies, just like Tim Dillon and Joe Rogan are talking about in this clip. And then you have the rise of transhumanism. You have with Elon Musk and Neuralink and putting a chip in the brain and being able to have, quote, the intelligence of the gods is what it's been called. And it'll turn us into something that's not human. Talking about this on the show for a long time, the past 4 years. It's a big fear. And it's something that's going to come with a lot of pushback. And so, again, to kind of weave this all back together, this is what J.D. Vance is. J.D. Vance worked at a tech company in San Francisco, but it was essentially a no-show job. When you listen to people that interviewed his quote-unquote coworkers, they said he never came into this job once. This is where he was able to write the book Hillbilly Elegy. And it's very interesting. This guy was posed. He was posed as like a never-Trumper in 2016, 2015. And we know this, right? You've seen the clips. You can go all the way back. And he says, I think Trump is Hitler. I think Trump's a Nazi. I don't like all the policies. I don't agree with anything. Condemns him. And then Trump wins. and he wasn't supposed to win. This is the greatest political victory of all time, the biggest underdog victory of all time. Completely beat the system, completely showed how voting works and this stuff. If you really have a focused political campaign and you touch with a message, you touch the people and you make them feel the issues, they'll vote for you. And he ran a flawless political campaign. Didn't take any donations. Very, very smart. And so he does the impossible, and then all of a sudden you see, oh, this guy has the power now. So they slowly kind of morph J.D. Vance, because that was going to be their Trojan horse. That was going to be their guy to somehow get in the White House, get somebody in the White House, have a pawn, and then they have all the power. And when they have all the power, they can control all the regulation. And then when you have somebody who is essentially your pawn in the White House, who's the most powerful person in the world, and you can kind of control regulation. You can kind of control what you're able to get away with. And so that's their ultimate goal with him, is to be able to have all of this power to push forth these ideas, to push forth transhumanism, to push forth all of these, the H-1B visas, which we've talked about on the show, so they can employ people at a cheaper rate and force out American labor. This is real. This is happening right now. And then so obviously 2020 comes around. He loses the election. 2022, J.D. Vance sees that Trump, okay, he's putting his hat back in the ring. J.D. Vance also successfully runs for senator, wins senator in 2022 in Ohio. Had a massive backing by, you guessed it, Peter Thiel, who we literally just referenced. And so we're going on and on and on, and now you have J.D. Vance openly talking about, oh yeah, if Trump dies, yeah, I'll succeed him no matter what, of course. And it's like kind of coming out of nowhere, essentially. And there was a scare about Trump's health. People thought Trump was dead a week ago. Now he's miraculously back, and nobody's talking about it. It's very creepy, and it's very interesting, man. So we'll continue to monitor this. Hopefully it doesn't happen. It'll be a big problem if he does somehow get to be president without being voted in. But it's a very dark thing, and this is just obviously like a summary. This is not bringing much facts to the whole situation. There's multiple people on the internet that have done very good deep dives on the subject, and would highly recommend you go check that out. But yeah, that's the show. So please, feel free to give the show a like, a subscribe, a comment, anything just to push the show up in the algorithm. Appreciate everybody watching, and we'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.